This is the Leading Second podcast, where we're on a mission to equip local churches everywhere to raise up uncommon leaders. The Leading Second podcast releases every Thursday morning, so hit follow and share this episode with your team. Now, let's jump into another episode for all of us who lead from the middle. This is the year of the leader. This is the Leading Second podcast. Hello and welcome to the Leading Second podcast, Season 6. I'm so glad you're here. We've created this space for you. If you lead in the middle, if you lead but you're not in charge, and you're just wanting to give your all for the kingdom of God and for your church to get it right with your pastor, this is the space for you. My name is Clark, and I'm one of the team members here at Leading Second. And we've got a great extended episode for you today. We are joined by some of the leaders from Rivers Church in South Africa. And we also have one of our friends, Pastor Tracy Keene, with us as well. And they're sitting down today with Pastor Brandon to talk about healthy culture across multiple locations. And we get a chance to peek into the life of the Rivers Church team. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right in to the conversation.
Well, Adi, Claire, welcome to the Leading Second podcast. So glad to have you guys here today.
Thanks for having us. It's
Thank
good to
you.
be here.
So honored to have you. I love your house. I love Rivers Church. I'm not saying this because you're sitting here. 100% a bucket list church for me to get to come and see someday. My pastor spoke so highly of you and your house and your pastors over the years. So fun to get to talk today.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And I have a person interviewing me I'm very jealous of because you've actually been to Rivers Church. Pastor
Yes.
Tracy Keene,
Yes.
coming back to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I love you, friend.
I love you back, friend.
And you and your husband got to go to Rivers Church.
We did.
What, a few months ago?
April. Yeah. It was fantastic.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm excited to be talking to y'all today. Maybe start us off by just telling us a little bit about you and what you do at the church.
Okay. I've been on the team for 21 years now. My dad is a senior pastor, so I was kind of born into the
You've
church.
been on the team your whole life.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there since the church started. It was the Santon Assemblies of God, and then it became Rivers Church, but that was in 1992. So since I was like 15 years old, and I've had a bit of a up and down journey along the way.
Sure.
Yes.
Left church, came back, got radically recommitted, which eventually led me to join the staff team 21 years ago. And now my wife and I oversee one of the locations. We're the lead pastors. And we're in a great season. We're loving it.
That's awesome. And how many kiddos do you have, Claire?
We've got 2 officially.
Yeah.
We've got our son Aiden, he's 18 and a half, and we've got our miracle baby Chloe Rose, she's 11, and then we've got Fefe, who's kind of like our foster child, and she's 6. And yeah, together they keep us very
You're just covering all the
busy.
bases there. Look at that.
Beautiful.
Detail.
That's amazing. And for context for everybody listening, you're called lead pastors. Many churches in North America would probably use the term campus pastor. It's different, and I'd love to maybe hear how it's different. But I want everyone to know, maybe how that kind of relates to their role. It's a similar term, but maybe tell us just what does that flow look like for you?
We did have a role of campus pastor previously, but I think as each location took on its own unique set of challenges or unique needs, rather, we changed, strategically changed the name because people would treat campus pastors like facilitators. Oh, you're the person on the ground kind of thing, and it was important for us to establish the role as a leadership role. So when we came back from one of our smaller campuses that we pioneered for 5.5 years, people actually related to us as campus pastors because it was a satellite model that we came, the Kyalami campus that we lead now was a satellite model. And so people thought we were just going to, MC and kind of be there pastorally, and they were going to stream in the message from our main campus, which was the model for, I think, 3 years or a year before the pandemic. So we just felt it was necessary to change that role, or to change the title so that people related to it and understood that, we're not the senior pastors, but we are fully responsible for each location that we lead.
Amen.
Yeah.
Which is a great perspective, because you're leading second. You're lead pastors, but you're still a part of a greater house.
Exactly.
And so in your own way, you're dealing with those tensions, those decisions. Tracy, what did you love most about Rivers Church? Because they're not going to brag on themselves. So why don't you just brag?
Yes. So there were many, many, many things. And we haven't had the opportunity. I shared with your parents, Pastor Andre and Pastor Wilma. Of course, in our context, yours as well, both churches in the U.S. a lot, and what we experienced with you guys in your campuses, the spirit of hospitality was so evident. The culture of excellence and the culture of honor. And I'll give you one detail that was striking to me, because we've traveled to many different churches across the U.S., and my husband's been to North Africa before. But one of the things that was striking to me, and it may sound like minor or like petty, but it was a big deal because my husband was the invited speaker.
Yeah.
Right.
But when we got to the parking lot, the grounds, people knew my name.
Yeah.
Hi, Pastor Tracy. And of course, my temperament, I was like, yes, so that was one thing. But then it was also other little details, like when my husband would leave the green room, there would be an attendant standing by the door with a tray that would offer, cough drops, breath mints, chewing gum, a bottled water, and of course, getting into the sanctuary itself under the chair was, again, all of those types of things to keep yourself refreshed. And then after his time of ministry, going back into the green room, here's another attendant with the tray. Yeah. And this tray has hot, white, rolled up washcloths with hand sanitizer that smelled so fresh and so clean, right? So it was details like that. And what it put me in the mind of was how Queen of Sheba, I can only imagine how she would have been. And scripture tells us when she saw the temple that Solomon had built, her breath was taken away. And Pastor Lonnie and myself, that is how we felt at Rivers Church. And not just the main campus, but your campus.
It was replicated.
It was replicated very, very well.
It's interesting that you brought that up. I wasn't sure what you were going to say, but it's okay. So I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm just going to, because it's podcast, so it's like out there. But as someone who goes to other churches, I have been able over the years to draw a direct line from some of the stuff you're talking about, which you could argue is just chewing gum.
Sure.
And hand sanitizer.
Sure.
I have been able to draw a direct line from that to team health.
Oh,
because
amen.
it is a byproduct. In fact, I have 2 or 3 little tells before a trip. I shouldn't tell them all, but I have 2 or 3 little tells before a trip. You can tell a lot about the health of a team simply by certain things.
Absolutely.
What you're speaking of is not just gum.
No.
And water.
Can I give you one more?
Yeah, sure.
Because this was also amazing to me. And again, it may sound trivial to some, but it was impressive. So we got an 11-page itinerary emailed to us. We were going to be there for almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so we knew what was coming down the pike the time that we were going to be there.
Yeah.
And some would say, we gave you what you needed, and now when you arrive, you should be set. But that wasn't the culture of honor and excellence that we saw. When we got to our room, that email was translated into a booklet that contained all of the 11 pages of information that we needed to have an impactful time of ministry with the Rivers Church. And it wasn't just at the main campus when we got to that hotel. When we got to North Durban, our time spent there, they had a separate itinerary.
Yeah.
We already knew what it was going to look like, but they had that in booklet form as well in the hotel room upon our arrival. So it was details that, to your point, Pastor Brandon, like no detail was left unattended to.
So one of the expressions that we've had that Pastor Andre's sown into us, taught us for over the decades, is the difference between mediocrity and excellence is effort. And so if you're going to do something, you may as well do it well. Otherwise, why bother at all? And I think that we've got so many expressions that Pastor Andre has coined, also around books that he's written. Another one is, so he's done a book, Becoming a Person of Excellence. Another one, Finding a Way to Win. So yeah, a bunch of the reasons why you find these things is because it's ingrained in who we are.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that for a minute, and then we're going to get to talking about kind of your role and how you navigate the second chair. But let's talk about Johannesburg for a minute, because as I've always understood, your church is you're intentional.
Yes.
About some. I mean, excellence is not just
By accident.
It was just not just wanting to be the flashiest or something. Like you're really intentional about being counterculture, particularly to your city. Would you just describe, I guess, what is that like, building an intentional church in your city, in your context?
It's difficult. I mean, just thinking across the 5 locations, it looks a little different.
Sure.
As you go from city to city or town to town. But I think the culture of our country is quite chaotic at times. There's a lot of corruption. There's not a lot of excellence. There's not a lot of attention to detail. And a lot of what Pastor Tracy was describing there is a result of, my dad, my parents traveling or being hosted and not experiencing that, or thinking, like my dad's really good at thinking about, like, what would he appreciate if he was traveling and he was jet lagged? What would he appreciate? What would help him to bring,
that's right,
to bring the word or to bless that house the most? And then he puts that into play in the way that we operate. So I think in the same way, looking at our nation, we've kind of looked at what society offers, or what the societal norms are, and then we've had to work really hard to kind of not just to be countercultural, but just the odds are sometimes stacked against you, because the values of the house aren't always the values that like when we come to a first world country like America. Oftentimes things are clean, things are well run. Obviously, not everywhere, but
right,
for the most part.
And compared to Africa, things are maintained and well ordered. So we already live in a society where things are deteriorating. People don't care. They'll just drive through, red traffic lights if no one's coming, or we're dealing with crime as well, high levels of crime.
Check your lids out the car
very,
window.
Very high levels of unemployment. So we've got all of that, and then we're trying to bring like kingdom culture into everything that we do.
Yes.
And I think that's what I just love to highlight for everybody. If you've never heard, someone from the team from Rivers talk, is just, whatever obstacle you're facing culturally around you, it is possible to build something that is counterculture, but it takes.
The church has to be the head. The church has to be the head, not the tail. We can't look to government, can't look to the world.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yeah.
So, okay, tell you what I'm interested to talk to you about first of all today. We'll just see how far we go on this. We have a script that'll take us 5 episodes, so we're not going to get to it. But I'm interested. Okay, so you're lead pastors, which again, closest equivalent, is in some ways a campus pastor, in that you're one house with many, locations. But yet you have really high empowerment, being lead pastor. Obviously, there's teaching, I'm assuming, responsibilities and some of that. So I would just love to hear you guys talk about how you navigate high level of ownership, and owning something like it's your own, but understanding that at the same time it's not your own.
Yeah.
And it isn't that the second chair tension constantly
Absolutely.
So I have more that I'll ask, but I would just love to hear you describe what that tension is like for you.
I mentioned earlier, 21 years on the staff team. I think 25 years since I came back to church and recommitted my life after having a prodigal son moment, and telling my girlfriend, my wife now, that I'll never go to my parents' church.
Come on, somebody. Come on.
So I've been on a journey, and it hasn't always been easy. But I think as lead pastors, when we first experienced that role after running the creative team at church for many years, more than a decade, I was quite surprised at what I had in me in terms of what had been built into, because I kind of got there going, well, I've only preached 3 times, and it's a true story.
So good.
3 times, and I'm the creative guy, and give me something to design or a song to write or screen graphic or an edit, and I'm good. Keep me in the shadow. So it was like a very, very steep learning curve. But I think we realized just how, even though we're family, that we are truly sons and daughters in the house. It doesn't really work unless we have that model. We don't have we don't outsource and put out adverts. Like, no one on our team leadership emerges without being a son or a daughter in the house. So,
not just leadership, the entire staff.
well, yeah, the entire staff.
Sure.
But certainly in terms of lead pastors, campus pastors. So I think that helps a lot, because you kind of have like a family mentality. You kind of, this kind of, my dad often talks about, bringing everything in through the lens of family, and which is always healthy. You've got grandparents, or you've got parents, and then you've got the kids, and everybody has their place. Everybody has their responsibilities.
Yes.
So that certainly helped us in the way that we've run campuses. We've seen it as, okay, this is the responsibility that's been given to me, and I'm going to take the bull by the horns. I'm going to take full ownership. I'm going to go as far as I can with this thing. I'm not going to bury it in the sand. I'm not just going to maintain. Because maintenance always leads to regression. We have the responsibility of enlarging that church, that campus, reaching people, equipping team. But at the same time, we know that we're doing what we're doing so that our senior pastors don't have to do it. So it's kind of like, it's that model of kind of holding up, hands. That, if we weren't at Kyalami doing what we're doing there, then our senior pastors would have to be there. They'd have to be on the ground. They'd have to come week in, week out. So it's almost like knowing that we are releasing them from that puts our role into perspective.
That's right.
If that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
Also, it's about stewardship. And I think it's so freeing when you understand stewardship. It's like when you have your kids. God has given them to you to steward, but it's not forever. And you have to constantly keep in the back of your mind that at some point you're going to have to let them go. Yeah. And as painful as that may be, that's the reality. When you hold on to something so tightly and you think like, I'm never going to give this up and this is mine now and no one can take it from me. I think when you just hold it loosely, realizing you're stewarding it on behalf of someone else and God has entrusted you for that season, who knows how long that season is going to be.
And that's so
you can be at peace.
By the way, I could listen to you guys talk forever. Is the South African accent not the greatest accent on the face of the planet?
No.
It is so beautiful.
So side note, I used to have my Waze app a South African accent or maps or whatever it was.
Let me just hear
I just anyways, that's embarrassing.
It's beautiful.
Okay, you're asking a question next, but we're on to something here with stewardship. So I just want to finish this out because I believe you all have a story about when you launched a campus. Maybe tell this story about launching it, but then having to lay it down. Because my point that I was getting to with high ownership is we own something, and if we're not careful, it could even become our identity.
Definitely.
And then when we in the second chair we own it, but we're not the owners. Then sometimes we're asked to lay it down. That could be challenging.
Yeah.
So I'd
Yeah.
love to hear your
Yeah.
story about the campus, if you want to tell it.
Okay.
The launching of Belito.
Yeah. So in 2016, we were asked to move to KwaZulu-Natal, which is the east coast of South Africa. I actually grew up there by the Indian Ocean. And we were asked to go to a very small coastal town.
Coastal town where
Our
everybody
son said-
goes to get away from.
Right.
Yeah, like it was
From
originally
Joburg.
retirement
Yeah.
and holiday homes. And we were asked to go and pioneer. They'd basically bought a warehouse. We were paying it off. And we had fitted out the interior of the warehouse. So we had a beautiful little auditorium, no offices in the beginning, and a car park, and another half of the warehouse that was just sitting empty. So we had the sound and the infrastructure, praise God, that we owned.
Sure.
But basically, we were asked to move with our kids down there and pioneer that campus in a little town where nobody knew who Rivers was. It's like, okay, people overseas in the States know who Rivers and Pastor Andre are, but here, like, nobody knew. And even though there was a Rivers in Durban North down the drag, like 50 kilometers away. And so that was a very big thing, obviously moving your family and what have you.
And also coming from such a big
From the city.
environment,
Right.
coming from, I mean, the Santon current
Yes.
facility, which is like a 3,000-seater auditorium,
Right.
wasn't open for very long before. I think it was 9 months or 10 months before
Yeah.
we went down. So and that was the church that we grew up in.
You knew and grew up
So
in.
it was like going
Yeah.
back to the
so
beginning
it was like going
days.
back to
Right.
the start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was actually super helpful that we had
Yeah,
been there in
yeah.
the early days, because so
Yeah.
much of what
Sure.
we had to, the
Do,
culture and what we had to
And
build,
then,
we drew on
it's
those
like
early
I said
days.
earlier, that what was in you actually came out. We didn't realize that it was in us, but
Yeah.
when we're in that situation,
It came
started to
out.
come out. Yeah.
But it was very hard. Our son
was.
didn't transition well at all. He was just sort of 12, becoming a teenager. He's an introvert. He'd grown up with the same friends his whole life, born into the church, and he was like, what is this stupid little town? It didn't even have a mall. It didn't even have a mall.
Didn't have a
They
mall.
built a
And
mall
for a
in the
kid,
town.
that's a big
Yeah, come on.
deal.
And he's a Joburg boy,
Yeah.
and he's like in his docks and it
Right.
was like jackets, and the kids, they're all running around in slip-slops. I don't know what you call them here, thongs.
Yeah,
No, that's
yeah.
Australian.
That's not thongs here.
Flip flops.
Thongs is something else.
Flip flops, yeah.
Flip-flops.
But despite the difficulties and those early months and years where we kind of thought, like, is this punishment? Why are we here? You know, like all of that. You kind of you get on with it, and you kind of go, okay, well, we didn't choose to come here.
And we're very honored to have been asked.
Yeah,
Gosh.
and I mean, we were in a season of yes, where it was just
Right.
like, will you go? Yes. And then afterwards we thought about it and thought, wow,
Right,
okay,
yeah.
I've said yes. But it was kind of like because I think prior to that, and this is a whole nother story, there was a season of no. And we,
Sure.
and kind of God dealt with us in that season, and we kind of came back out of that season saying, well, whatever my parents are asking us to do, whatever God's asking us to do, we're just going to say yes, and we're just going to trust, God's timing and His plan. But I think, we were there, and we were like, we didn't ask to come here. We didn't want the coastal life. We're here to build the church. And so we just got stuck in. I think up until COVID, we were working as if we were in the city. We didn't enjoy the lifestyle. We weren't at the beach. We weren't doing any of that stuff that everybody goes there for. We were just focused on getting this church up and running. And it happened pretty quickly, but like after 3 years, we were already on 3 services.
Wow.
And we were making a bit of a dent. We were one of the few, if not the only, sort of multicultural church in that area.
Wow.
Which
So
is
beautiful.
part of our DNA as a church anyway.
That's right.
But I think in that we were holding on to it tightly in terms of ownership, and knowing that it was up to, no one was coming. They weren't sitting in.
No one's coming.
They sent us from Santon, and there was no one else coming to help us, so we just had to get on with it. But at the same time, I think we made that decision up front that our identity wasn't going to be in that, because if we're no longer the lead pastors of that campus, then what is our identity?
Yep.
And so when we were asked to come back, it was very easy for us to. I mean, obviously it was a complicated thing to.
And sad,
And sad, but we knew it was God's timing. But it was very easy to go, okay, we'll come back, because it wasn't like, no, this is mine. I've spent the last 5.5 years.
Yeah.
My kids
It was
have
a bit like handing
struggled
over a
through.
baby, but
It was emotional, obviously, because you've put your heart
Your
and soul
sweat,
into
sure,
it.
your heart and soul.
But I think with any of our lead pastors, if any of them were asked to move, again, it's difficult. There's the complexities, but I think the heart for all of us is just that we're doing whatever needs to be done to further the kingdom, and to build the local church. We're not building, our own empire or anything like that.
and you got to see it as an adventure, a God adventure.
We're going to be right back to the conversation in just a moment, but I wanted to talk to you about one of our partners, Tithely. Do you want to grow generosity at your church? I'm sure you do, and if so, then you need to make it easy and convenient to give. Tithely is a resource that offers free online giving tools, and it makes it simple for your church members to tithe and make offerings. With Tithely, church members can give from any device, and that includes mobile giving, text to give, and giving on any sort of computer or laptop. And on average, churches who use Tithely see an increase in their giving 165% year over year. A great investment. And so if you want to learn more about how you can use Tithely to grow generosity at your church, go to tithely.com. Now let's return to the second part of today's conversation.
Well, here we are. We're continuing our conversation today with Adi and Claire from the Rivers Church, and we weren't able to get it all in when we were all sitting in the same room at Team Church Conference. So here we are. We are relegated to Zoom to finish out our conversation. We're laughing because it's like, what is it for you all? 4:00 in the afternoon?
Yeah.
Yep.
We gave you the good time. We're 7 a.m. over here, so we were all laughing about it. But here we go. There's still some gold that we wanted to pull out of you, Pastor Tracy. We gave you the good time. We gave you 10 a.m. this morning.
It's a perfect time. I've had my coffee. I've had my toast. I'm ready.
Why don't you take us forward, Pastor Tracy?
Thank you, Brandon. So I guess my next thing to bring up to us to kind of discuss or unpack, if you will, would be the maintaining of consistency across all of the locations. You guys do an excellent job of doing that. Pastor Lonnie and myself, we were in Johannesburg back in April and had an opportunity to preach at 2 of the campuses, but then actually see the campus that you guys lead, as well as the campus that Pastor Devin and his wife lead. And so what was striking to me was this consistent culture. The staff, whether we were just touring one of the locations or whether it was a Sunday morning and my husband was going to preach, everybody was at 100% fully engaged, with an attitude and a heart posture that they were honored to be on staff. They were honored to just stand in the lobby, and if we needed a cold bottle of water while we're touring the building, they were on deck to bring a cold bottle of water. And that was, again, all campuses. Everybody was at 100%. On Sundays, didn't run into anybody who, you guys have multiple services, but the consistency, the heart posture, the mindset that we are here to serve, and it is our pleasure to serve, it was demonstrated. Nobody was half-hearted. So how do you guys accomplish that, and how do you maintain it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's both simple and complicated at the same time, if that makes sense. It's a simple thing in that we have a very strong, deliberate culture as a church. I think it starts there. Not very much, if anything, is left to chance. So everything's pretty well thought out. There's a lot of communication around the culture and the DNA of the church. And then, the simple thing is that although we've got 5 locations, we'll never send out a lead pastor or a campus pastor who isn't a son or a daughter in the house.
Yeah.
So when you're part of the family, when you've got that DNA, it makes it a lot easier than just having someone go or forcing it or rushing it. Like all our locations have really happened organically. We haven't said, oh, we should be in 6 locations or 5 locations. It's just kind of happened as the team has grown and as our young leaders have emerged. Like us, we used to head up the worship and creative team. We're not that old, but in our younger years, and then you kind of you grow and you into other roles, and we've seen that with many of our team, but they've all got the same DNA. There's a definite, like when you meet someone who's the son or a daughter, you go, oh, I can see that that's your mom or your dad, or I can see that that's your son, and I think that's like a non-negotiable quality for us. And I think that makes it very simple that when a couple gets sent to plant a campus, there's that assurance that, even though the mission might be a little bit different, like if you go to all 5 of our locations, they all have different personality because all the lead pastors have got different personality. They have the same spirit and the same DNA. So that's the simple part. I think the complicated part is that, not complicated, but the difficult part is just as we build teams and as people join the church and we add volunteers is to pass that culture on. So we do a lot of fine tuning. We do a lot of debriefing. We look at everything after every service. What could we have done better? We don't just kind of set it up and then leave it to chance. We focus on the detail.
Yeah, if I can add to that, at the foundation, one of the things that we have done at Rivers for forever is you have to go do a class or attend a course in order to consciously make a decision to become a partner or a member of the church. We don't just consider anyone just because you come regularly, you're a member. You make a decision that you want to partner at Rivers. And when you do the partnership class, we spend an evening with usually a group of staff, and we go through a brochure. So every person that attends gets a brochure. It's got our vision, our values, our culture, the 4 pillars of our church, which is worship, reach, connect, and volunteer. And we talk a lot about culture. And at Rivers, we because South Africa is so diverse. I mean, we've got people from every culture you can imagine, 11 official languages. So how do we united front? What do we unite on? So we call it Heaven's Culture, and we take love it. So we take the principles of the Word, and what does the Word tell us to unite on. And so when someone has done that class, we've got criteria that you need to meet in order to become a partner. There are certain things that would mean you're not ready yet to become a partner. One of them is agree to volunteer. You agree to give your time, your talent, and your treasures. So you agree to tithing. Maybe you're struggling at the moment because you're unemployed, but essentially you agree to the principle of tithing. You agree that you will give of your time and your talent, and you're on board with the vision, the values, the culture of the church, and you will submit to the leadership. And then you actually sign that form, fill in a form, and we do an official welcome. So from the very ground, everybody that is part of the core, from your outskirt volunteers, has gone through that process, understood what it means to be a part of Rivers Church. Who are we? What are we about? What are they signing up for? What are they partnering with? And so at least at the basis, you've got that agreement. Yeah, so they've decided to partner, play their part, yeah.
Beautiful. I'm going to inject something here for a minute, because you said it was simple, and it is simple, but we have a culture issue here. And that is, you said, we do not start a campus with anyone who's not a son or daughter of the house. Okay, I just want to take out the highlighter pen and I would just want to highlight that for just a minute. This is probably a highlight too of a little bit of our American context that wants to build like an organization or a business. And we all know there's an organizational side to this. I'm not refuting that. But I think sometimes like we even use the term, if we're being generous in the US, we use the term hire within, rather than an outside hire, we hire within, which again is a fine principle. I just want to show people the depth of what you just said. You said we do not start a campus without anyone who is not a son or daughter of the house. And I love the principle of a spiritual house. I consider myself a son of the house, of our house. I think, taking out the highlighter pen. We don't have to spend long on it. I just think it's a worthy thought for leaders to go, am I raising up employees or am I raising up sons and daughters in the house? I think that's a big difference. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we 100%, and we actually wouldn't employ anyone really at any level. I mean, we do have certain, contractors. We have electricians and we have cleaning staff, those types of people that aren't necessarily sons and daughters in the house. It's just kind of contractual. But if you come onto our staff in any role, whether you're an intern, a receptionist, if you're a graphic designer, you have to be part of our church. You have to have walked a journey. You have to be known. So you've got to be part of a connect group, or preferably have served in a volunteer ministry where a leader can vouch for you. And then we even have a program called Test Your Call, which is where volunteers go through a process where they kind of like working on staff after hours, like as a sort of a test run for them to see if they feel called to ministry, is this really what I want to do? And it's also for us to be able to say, hey, we do believe there's a call of God in your life, or believe it, or the timing's not right. Like we just took on someone to oversee our worship team at our campus, the one that we oversee, Kyalami, and he did Test Your Call in 2018. But at the time, the timing wasn't right. There wasn't a position for him. He wasn't 100% sure. We were a bit unsure. And it took 4 more years of serving for him to actually come in. But by the time you come into the staff team, you might not have that full understanding of what it's like to work at the church. But we have like no doubt that you have our DNA, and as a person coming onto the team, you understand like, okay, I know what this is about. This is not just like, I want to work at church. I'm loving church at the moment. So we've got all of those processes in. And even then, some people come onto the team for a year or 6 months, and they're like, actually, I kind of feel. But we never put out ads, and I know it's a cultural norm in the States. We don't do classifieds or any. We've had many people come to us and say, I work at another church, but I'm looking for another opportunity. We won't even consider them until they become part of our church and they've walked the journey.
I'm not. Yeah, and I certainly don't want to villainize some of those approaches. In fact, we have one or two over the years that have been outside hires, so to speak, in our house that have worked, but there's still sonship, I think, involved in there somewhere. I think that's what's created the enduring culture that you see at Rivers Church or even my home church. There's an enduring culture to it that is special, and it has lasted. But it's because of those who carried it at that level. So I digress. I just think it's worth a highlight note for so many leaders listening. Just ask a question: are you a son or daughter of the house, or is this a place of just simple employment to you? I think it's a worthy question. Okay, Pastor Tracy, I digress, and I
No, I thought that was really, really good. Well, it has my wheel spinning. I was going to ask about strategies that you guys employ to maintain that consistency of culture, but you've already answered that question, and you have layers of the things that you guys put in place, strategies and processes and structures to ensure that this culture that we are designing, it will be maintained. And you ask very clear questions, it sounds like. I love the test. Would you call it, Pastor AD, the test of call?
Test your call. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
test
beautiful.
your call. Like that it's beautiful, and it's really genius, And again, some things sound simple, but they're actually very profound and loaded with efficiency and impact to really build the kingdom and make sure that the culture is guarded and it's maintained and that everybody understands. I do think that there is a difference between a higher, I'm here to get a paycheck, versus I really have a heart for this house and I am completely all in. I'm sold out. And I understand that ministry, to be on staff at a church, to be a keeper of the culture, it does look and it requires something different than a person who is there to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Let's get really geeky for a second here, like 60 seconds. And let's talk about the meetings that support this, because this is the space we all live in, right, Pastor Tracy? Like we live in these meeting rooms. So if you're debriefing or you're in a meeting that is establishing culture across campuses, like who's in those meetings? What are you talking about? Could you just break that down for us really briefly?
Well, I think that it happens at different levels. Obviously, at the what we call the lead pastor or senior leader level would be all our leaders who run campuses, executive pastor, operations manager. You've met Sean and Pastor Kogi.
Oh, they're brilliant. Yeah.
Yes.
So we would be in meetings with them and with our senior pastors. And we would talk about, high-level decisions, things that would impact, all the locations and the way in which we do church. There's a lot of conversation. Sometimes that happens around the boardroom table. Other times it's phone calls. Hey, we've had this discussion. We're looking at this. So there's a lot of that constant conversation going on. But on individual campuses, I think, before and after every service, we'll have briefings. We'll try to figure out, like, if we've got 2 or 3 services, we'll try to figure out what we can do better for the next one. And it's not things like, maybe in the past we would focus on some of the minor, what I would call minor detail now, like the things that people knew that they didn't quite get right, like, that vocal was a bit off key, or the lights should have come up. Like, there's a lot of that stuff that people know, like, we broke the atmosphere, or we didn't do things well. It's more like the glaringly obvious things where we know, like, hey, we weren't the best at welcoming people into the house today. People didn't feel like people were connecting with God during worship. We didn't facilitate. We didn't help people today. So we're constantly having those conversations. And it all comes back to that culture where it's so easy to spot, it's so easy to spot when something isn't working or it isn't right, because if it doesn't interfere with the culture, then it kind of goes. If someone does something that's a little different, we go, well, the goal was met. Our goal is to encourage people. Our goal is to lead them in worship. If those criteria are met, well, then that's great. We don't prescribe down to the T of what that's going to look like, because no one will ever get it right. But as long as it aligns with the culture, and then we have that conversation as well. We tell people what they did well, and we tell them what they didn't do well, and we meet with our staff team, every week to give them input and follow up, and what can we do better for the week coming, which isn't always measurable. It's like, well, like, we had a great weekend. Well, how can we have an even better weekend? Sometimes you can't. You just have to make sure that you can serve people well long term.
Yes.
I think like we're focusing on longevity more than like the immediate victories, if that makes sense.
So what Adi is also talking about, say for example, on a Sunday morning service time, he would meet with some of the key staff who would then meet with because obviously the staff are responsible for different ministry teams, who would then meet with their ministry leaders, who then those ministry leaders and staff would meet with the individual volunteer teams to pass on specific messages, to do a brief before prayer, before services, and then they would do debrief. So it's not like we're meeting with the entire volunteer army.
We don't have a huddle like we saw at Team Church. Like, when we were overseeing a smaller campus down in Belito, where Devin and Natanya are pastoring now, we had a thing called All Call, which was all the volunteer teams, because it was
like the huddle.
it was like 50 or 60 people, and when they got into the auditorium, we worshiped together. We brought a focus to what we were about to do for that day. It wasn't a time to pray for needs or anything like that. It was just like, let's get focused. This is what we're here to do. Let's roll out the red carpet. Let's make let's glorify the name of Jesus. Let's help. But on bigger campuses where the volunteer teams are maybe a couple of hundred people, and there's like a lot of moving parts, we rely on those individual leaders to go off and constantly feed. And then beyond days, to stay in touch with people and keep talking and tuning. And we love our volunteers. We can't do what we do without them, but we do call them to a very high level. And so if someone comes in the wrong uniform, we don't go like, oh, it's cool. It's like all for Jesus. Yeah. We kind of like, maybe sometimes we do when someone's going through something, they got locked out of home and they didn't have clothes. But we
give them a t-shirt.
But we kind of like, we've got non-negotiables. So some of them might seem like silly, like, oh, you wouldn't let somebody serve for that reason, or like we have something in place where, like, if you don't come to the rehearsals, we can't let you serve. You won't get onto the roster unless you're coming on a Wednesday night and you're part of the team and you understand the lifeblood. And we're like quite strong on those things. And we've been called. So good. We've been called like
it really is.
We've been called like, we're so hectic. That's like a South African thing. You guys are so hectic, and you tell people where to sit and you tell them where to park. And we live in a country that, and I don't know if I mentioned this when we chatted last, but we live in a country where we don't have a lot of order. And so we feel like church is an environment, and God is a God of order, not of chaos. And so we bring a lot of order to the church environment, which also helps us to facilitate like what we're talking about now.
I just love it. I'm dying over here while you guys are talking. What I just heard is, if you aren't locked out of your house and if you don't have no shirt, you're there.
Yeah. We'll give you a shirt. Yeah.
We'll give you a shirt. Yeah, I love that. That's perfect.
Well, what I love, I mean, we're laughing, but I love the fact that my wheels are just spinning over here, because I love so much of what Claire, you and AD, you guys are communicating. If I can just calm my brain down, but two things that you guys just said that really have my cylinders just popping over here. One, I'm wondering, how do you guys manage when you have a volunteer who does not take very well to the order and the culture that you guys are trying to establish, and they just don't take feedback or that high expectation for them to show up in a certain way? How do you guys manage that? Is that person not going to stay on the volunteer roster? If they're a staff member and they wear their feelings on their sleeve and they don't take feedback very well, how do you guys manage that?
Okay, well, if it were a volunteer, taking into account their personal circumstance, of course. I mean, maybe they're going through something in their life and they need some pastoring. But if they're just in general, like not really on board with the culture, not really on board with respecting the values and the culture of the house, we would say to them, you have done partners class. You made an informed decision to partner with this church. You didn't come in blindly. We told you and you signed up and you ticked all the boxes. Literally, we have boxes to tick. And you said you were on board. You also, when you decided that you wanted to join this team, say it's the ushering team, we explained to you that this is the uniform or the t-shirt that you would wear, that we would require you to wear shoes and not shorts, not pants, or whatever the case may be. We need you to be here at 7 a.m. in the morning. Otherwise, if you don't pitch, nobody's going to be there to fill your space, and we're relying on you. This team is relying on you. We count it a privilege to serve the house of God. And obviously, if we're sick or what have you, if you'd phoned in advance, we could have made an arrangement. But unfortunately, this is a pattern. So I think it would be best for you to sit in under the ministry. Take a break from serving. Maybe it's a season where you just need to receive from God, and you maybe need to just take some time to figure out if this is really where you want to plant yourself in this spiritual house, because there's many to choose from. But if we choose this home, it comes with the parents. When we part of a family, we have parents, and the parents set the tone for the home, and we can choose to be part of it, or we can choose to say, I don't want to be here.
And it doesn't happen.
Excellent.
Just to say, it doesn't happen in a church of like our campus is about with kids just over 2,000 in attendance on a weekend, and we have very few instances of what we're talking about. It does happen, but because of that partnership process, because people know exactly what they're getting into. In fact, some people, they want to get involved very quickly. Like, I love this church. It's amazing. It's changed my life. You hear that. And then when they do the partnership class and they see what it involves, or they come along to a creative team rehearsal, then they're like, oh no, I don't want to do this, And so that kind of weeds out a lot of that. And, but we never ever let it go. When someone's having a meltdown, or if someone's got a bad attitude, we don't just go like, oh gosh, okay, they had a bad day. We always, address it, whether it's the following week after the services, but we never let any of that slide. We always have a conversation, and we always start with like, hey, like, where are you at? Like, are you okay?
Right.
Because most of the time, people, their challenge or their inability to carry the culture is usually a direct result of something that's happening in their life personally.
Beautiful.
Or maybe and so we try to address it as like pastoral care first and foremost. We've never really had to like have like a serious fight with people, but I think that process of partnership, it kind of weeds out a lot of that where people go, oh, I'm really not ready.
I love it.
Or I'm not willing to do that, and that's okay. Many people come to our church and they just sit and they attend, and we ask them, we encourage to serve, but not everybody should serve. Some people need to heal and kind of get further along in their spiritual journey before they help us to build. Otherwise, they do more harm than good.
Yeah. Okay. So I just heard like 4 things. Y'all are giving us a master class, and I think somebody needs to listen to this. I just heard clear expectations up front. I just heard have the conversation. Like we don't let things go unaddressed. I just heard use your values or your culture as a backstop when you are talking. You're taking them back to agreements and who we are and reinforcing that. And I love this. You're starting with considering their personal journey or spiritual condition. I have told, man, thank you for saying that. I have coached pastors, executive pastors over the course of time. When someone on your team is not performing well, you can take the hard-nosed route if you want, but what if you took the pastoral route first? What if you stopped and asked them, just how are you? And I have seen God turn people's lives around because their authority issue or their disconnect from the culture or their late behavior or whatever was really, it was not the root. It was just the fruit of something going on deeper in their life. And thank you for your wisdom on that, I guess, to remind us that we are pastors and we are not just building a business here. We're building God's house. And so I loved that. I love that. I wanted to say one more thing on culture here really fast, just to highlight something. So going back a few minutes ago, I think it was you, Adi, who said this. You said, if there's a way that we've not served people well, or there was a gap in the culture, you said this line, you said it's easy to spot. And I want to talk about that for just a minute. This is going to be a little personal soapbox here. I think it's easy to spot. I think the problem is, though, we don't take the time to spot it. We think culture can be sometimes like a set it and forget it. Now, context. I am someone who 2 weekends of my month is spent being at churches to help them observe their culture. I have a full-time job just around viewing other people's culture. And my I shouldn't say this publicly because I'll ruin my job, but I started realizing a long time ago, this is really easy. It's the problem is we don't take the time to do it. It's not that it's hard. It's just that we don't prioritize it. And so then an outsider comes in and gives you feedback and you go, wow, amazing. And I do think there are things an outsider can see that you can't see when you're on the inside, in fairness. But I just wanted to highlight the point, and if you can respond to this if you'd like, that sometimes it's just taking the moment or having the right person that can look up and go, how are we doing? And I just think it's a discipline in fast-moving cultures, in fast-moving environments. We don't have the discipline sometimes of doing that. And I feel like you're bringing us back to that point, and I am saying I appreciate that in what you're saying.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you're 100% right. I would say the two things that sort of hamper our ability to do it is, firstly, like we don't make the time, like we don't have the time, like in inverted commas, like when the schedule is so full and there's just like event after event, and the calendar is just like it's ruling your ministry life. You don't always have the time to kind of step back and look at what it is that you're doing, like with perspective. You're like so in it that you kind of like you lose that perspective.
Yes.
And so we try to like build in that margin and have. I tell the staff team here at our campus often that they need time in their working week just to think. Like don't think that if you're just at your post thinking and strategizing and looking at what it is that you're doing, that you're not working. You don't be physically working all the time. You actually need time to think. Otherwise, you stagnate or you kind of miss things. And so I think we take the time to think deeply. Certainly as lead pastors, we think about everything that we do deeply. I also have made it a habit from time to time to question everything. It probably gets a little bit annoying. My wife probably gets annoyed a bit and the team, but I question everything. I'm like, why are these our service times? Let's just talk about that for a moment, and we kind of look at everything that we do and make sure that we're not just doing it because it was, historic. Oh, well, this is what we've always done.
Very good.
And that the world's changed. Or, I think when we came out of COVID, we started to ask some different questions, but we're like for us in South Africa, we're like 2 years into like post-COVID, like it feels like 2 years. And so
months,
you can already feel like you're back on the hamster wheel, like, okay, this is like 2019 again. But I think it's good to have those like reset moments where you look at everything that you do.
Beautiful.
You might come back to the same conclusions. You might say, okay, what we're doing is good. What we're doing is great. I think even when it comes to adding services and enlarging the church, you have to ask yourself, like, are you doing it like just because you want a bigger congregation, or do you have the capacity to lead and build into more people, or is it okay, to have these two services or one service and focus on building people in this season? So I think those are some of the important questions rather than just focusing on like success, if that makes sense.
Oh, thank you
It
for
makes
saying
total
that.
sense. Yes, it makes total sense. I love Pastor Adi when you just said, and again, it may sound simple, but it's profound. You need to have margin to just think. Our days cannot be spent in totality checking off the boxes. Simple but profound. Thank you for sharing that.
So I'd like to land the plane, so to speak, today with one more question, and I'd like to ask you about leading a culture of honor in your church. I feel like we've gone a lot of places today, but I just couldn't leave this one untouched with you all. I've grown up in a house with a strong and I think healthy culture of honor. I feel like I've heard that from anyone that has encountered your airspace. A healthy view. This, of course, can have a side, I suppose, that gets misused, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about a healthy culture of honor here. We get a lot of pushback on it right now, I guess, from younger leaders in North America. I don't know if it's the same where you're at. So could you just tell us for a minute, what is it like for you all architecting and leading a healthy culture of honor toward each other, toward authority, toward the people you serve? My pastor says we honor up, we honor down, we honor all around. He's kind of become infamous now for saying that,
Yes.
How has that been for you in your church culture over the years?
We have a similar culture of honor, and I think I understand the negative side of it. People are waited on hand and foot, or they treat the pastors or the differently, and that can get abused. And certainly I think that's a global thing. The celebrity pastor kind of culture, which I think is starting to sort of dissipate, which is, I think, a good thing. But yeah, we don't have a celebrity culture. We don't have bodyguards and people following us around. I know some leaders need that, and they've got credible threats and all of that. But I think it comes back to the family again. It's like when your sons and daughters in the house, you're taught to honor your mother and father. You're taught to honor your leaders, honor your elders, and so I think it's something that we don't go around telling people like, hey, you need to honor me. But I think we've been taught to be honorable, like as sons and daughters in the house, like, you honor other people because you're honorable, not necessarily because everybody's worthy of honor. And we have a lot of corruption in our country as well, which makes a culture of respect and honor very difficult, because people look at leaders, government, they look at police officers. I know there's been a challenge with that in the US as well, where people don't want to honor those in authority because some people are not behaving honorably. So yeah, I think it's that family, that family culture again. My dad, our senior pastor, talks a lot about the family and brings a lot of what we do as a church into the family model, which really gives us a great perspective. But I think that, there's something that we talk about fairly often, and we talk about culture, by the way, all the time. Whenever I can weave some of our church culture into a sermon, whether it's the way we seat people or whether it's people checking their kids in at kids' church and getting upset, we always try to speak into that rather than draw attention to it and scold people from the platform. We always try to weave it into everything that we do. But the two things that we share with the church fairly often, one is, what you honor, you'll prioritize.
That's right.
And so if you honor the church, if you honor the house, you'll prioritize. If you honor God, prioritize time with Him. You'll prioritize serving well. You'll if you honor the leaders, you will prioritize in terms of the way that you relate to them. But the other thing is that what you honor, you protect. And so we have that culture.
Yes.
And we create that if you truly honor your leaders, if you honor God and you honor the house, you'll protect it. You'll want to uphold the values, and you won't just honor people with your mouth. You won't just speak nicely to them or of them, but you'll honor them by being on time, being prepared. If you're serving in a volunteer ministry, giving of your best. So that's how we've done it. And my parents have not created a culture where, people, run around after them and, fan them with palm leaves and stuff like that. And Pastor Tracy, you being there, I'm sure you felt, you felt welcomed and loved and honored, but not to an uncomfortable degree. I think it's everything in its right place. Makes sense.
You said the root of it. It's not honor me, it's live honorably. And if every leader got that, I think we would be in a lot healthier place on that. Hey, I want to thank you guys for a great conversation. 2 parts, actually. I want you to know we respect you. And we love your house. It is a bucket list church for me, so I will be there someday, but never mind that. We love you guys. Thank you for adding value to our tribe. We love you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We love you guys.
Yeah, doing what you're doing.
Love you guys.
To find the episode guide, visit our website, leadingsecond.com/podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram @leadingsecond and join us on the Leading Second Collective on Facebook.